I'm here with my better half, the boss, the producer.
The boss.
We're here to talk about more on Biden and what the Democrats are really up to.
Did you say more on Biden or moron Biden?
Yeah, that's actually. I am a punster without even knowing it.
Oops. Okay, I heard moron.
What do you think about this speech that he gives, where we have to fight the Jim Crow of the 21st century?
Yeah.
The Democrats are up to their usual tricks.
Yes, they are. They definitely are. And it is really, it's amazing to me how they use a tactic in one aspect and not another. Because, we were just talking about that this morning, how he feels like asking for an ID is just horrific. Not to mention, it's not biblical if you're in line and you don't get water or bread. However, that same logic doesn't apply to going to a restaurant and the restaurant asking for a vaccination card, does it? How horrific that they're not going to feed you.
Well,
how unchristian-like.
Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., just said, listen, everybody in D.C., you need your vaccine card and you need a valid photo ID.
Okay, there you go. That's racist.
Yeah.
If they say it's racist to do one thing, it's racist to do another thing.
Right. And so the point is that it's supposedly voter suppression to require an ID, but it's, is it suppressing blacks from flying on airplanes to ask for them for ID at the airport or the bank?
It only applies to something that can easily be manipulated, if you get my drift, wink, wink. I can't say it on YouTube or any other,
Yeah. Now, let's talk about what's interesting here about Venezuela is it provided almost a playbook for the Democrats, right? They voter suppression. And the voter suppression here, people don't realize that one form of voter suppression is if there are laws that prevent you from voting. But laws that permit cheating and permit illegals from voting, people who shouldn't be voting, are also voter suppression, aren't they? Because they cancel out the votes.
They cancel out your vote. And you know what it also causes is when people, and I hate to say this and point this out, but a lot of people think that there were some shenanigans in this election, right? So when people start believing, and in Venezuela this did happen, people started believing that their vote didn't matter because no matter what they pulled the lever on, it was actually going to count for the other guy. So they're like, I'm not going to go stand in line and vote if my vote doesn't count. I'm done.
We know some of that happened in Georgia in the in the election in January, where people were discouraged and they felt like my vote's not going to matter,
and that is voter suppression because their vote is being they feel like their vote doesn't count.
They're being disenfranchised.
Right, they're being disenfranchised. So I think that it causes all sorts of issues when you do not conform to a particular way of voting in every state. And that is make sure that your vote counts, but only your vote counts.
Yeah, who would participate or watch even a sports game if you believed that the rules were somehow being rigged, right?
Or that the game was already decided. How fun would that be if you watched the Super Bowl and they had already determined who the Super Bowl winner was going to be, and all of the referees were all in on it? Okay, that's kind of how we feel.
Or in this case, all the referees are actually working for one side.
Right.
In other words, it's not open to question that part of the great infusion of cash that came from liberal billionaires, people like Zuckerberg, got the state and local governments involved in the election, in effect on the Democratic side. Why? Because they were plowing all this get-out-the-vote money in heavily Democratic districts. So that is not even really arguable. It is a case of kind of weighing the odds so that one side has a built-in advantage and using the government itself to do that.
Right. It's really interesting how all this has gone down. And I speak mostly to you about the Venezuela. The reason that I became so involved in 2010, 2012 elections with True the Vote, Catherine Engelbrecht, a dear friend, is because she knew then as she knows now, that there are a lot of shenanigans that go on.
I mean, you
in these
observed
elections.
them.
I observed them.
2012, was it?
I was a bilingual poll watcher, and I witnessed a judge, a voting judge, actually tell a Hispanic couple who and how to vote. And you cannot do that. And I caught her red-handed doing that. But
well, she didn't know that you knew Spanish.
she didn't know that I knew Spanish, and I surprised her. Oh, chica. but all that to say that it's not new. We need to make sure that our voter integrity is something that is an American ideal, right?
No.
If we start succumbing to third world country tactics, I mean, think about it.
I mean, that is the purpose of these voter integrity laws, and that is why these voter integrity laws are being targeted by Biden and are being targeted by the Democrats, because they want to establish a system in which these kinds of measures to protect voter integrity do not exist.
They don't. And before we end, I just want to wish my mom a speedy recovery. She is unfortunately has COVID, and so sending my prayers to mommy.